Hi everyone, welcome to UBS Trending. I'm your host, Wendy Mock. April is Financial Literacy Month, and to mark the occasion, I'm very happy to have in the studio with us today Kylie Seigel, an analyst from a Rising Gen segment. Her team helps investors in their 20s and 30s or those who are just starting out their financial journeys. Welcome, Kylie.
Thanks, Wendy. It's great to be here.
So financial literacy, it's a pretty broad topic, so maybe we can focus on those who are just starting out their careers. For those in that position, what would you say are the fundamental elements to financial literacy?
So you're exactly right. There's a lot to consider, especially as a rising gen investor who's, starting their first job or becoming financially independent for the first time from their families. So today what we're going to talk about are the 5 pillars of financial literacy, which is earn, save and invest, protect, spend, and borrow. And really having proficiency and the knowledge in those 5 areas will allow you to better meet your financial goals. And really that's the key of financial literacy.
Great, so let's tackle those 5 elements one at a time. Earning, what should people understand about their earning power?
Right, so you work a job, you earn income, but you want to make sure you're taking full advantage of the compensation that's offered to you by your employer. So what I'm talking about here is the 401k matching. A lot of employers will offer a match program to some of your contributions that you make towards your 401k. So what I think about and how I learned this is, let's say I make $100, I put $6 towards retirement in my 401k, my employer will contribute an additional $6. So while this is not, going to help me pay my rent or my bills today, this is a very important component of what I earn. And you want to make sure you're taking full advantage of what your employer is willing to offer and contribute towards your retirement.
Yeah, it's so important to understand that there's more than just a headline number to your salary. I think so many of us, our first job, or even maybe our first few jobs, we usually look at what is the salary and think that's all there is to it. But there's a lot to know in terms of 401k and the contributions from your employer. So thank you for sharing that. So you've gotten job offers, you've considered the various packages, including the 401k match, you've accepted the job, you have your first paycheck now. Now what?
So you want to think about what you're going to be saving and investing, and what we typically recommend is that you allocate 50% of your income towards your needs. So that's like rent, food, utilities. 30% will go towards your wants, so clothing and experiences, and then 20% will go towards paying down your debts or your savings. And if you can save more than 20%, that's fantastic, and you should absolutely, reach for that. But of that 20%, you're going to want to also consider investing. So investing in the market is a great way to help grow your wealth. In fact, the S&P 500 has been positive 94% of the time over a 10-year period. So it will really help you build your wealth. And so when I think about investing my income, I use the dollar cost averaging method. So I invest the same amount every month, so that way I'm not worried about fluctuations in the market or trying to time it. I have also picked investments that are right for my age and my time horizon, so I know I'll allow this money to grow without having to worry about what I'm going to be spending on the weekends, or if I want to go to a concert or sporting event, I have money allocated for that.
And you mentioned at the top of the show protecting yourself and protecting your wealth. What do you mean by that?
So when I think about protection, I think about having the right insurance and also having an emergency savings fund. So for me personally, I'm 24, I'm still on my parents' health insurance, and I don't yet own a home. So insurance isn't top of mind just yet. But I do like to have a savings cushions for emergencies, or rather unexpected expenses. For example, if I drop my iPhone and the screen cracks and I need to replace it, or even a positive unexpected expense like flying out to see my friend for her engagement. Having that emergency fund will allow you to pay for those unexpected expenses without having to take on debt. So you can start by allocating a small amount of your income towards that emergency fund, and you'll ideally build that fund up to be 3 to 6 months of living expenses. And you can get to that number by looking at your past 3 months of bank statements, going through and highlighting every expense that is really a necessity. And then that'll give you that number that you should be reaching for with your emergency fund.
So the next item you mentioned is spend. I think for many of us, that's the fun part, spending our hard-earned money. How do you go about spending wisely?
Right. So spending money is an unavoidable part of life. You have recurring expenses that we talked about, like the needs, the food, the electricity, your housing, but there's always going to be discretionary items in life as well. So we've talked about saving for retirement and saving for emergencies, but truly a key component of financial literacy is being able to spend your money responsibly. And it can be really hard for a lot of us in the rising generation to know what spending is essential, especially in this crazy age of social media where we're influenced to live beyond our means. Sometimes, scrolling down Instagram or through TikTok makes me feel like I need the next best thing, and sometimes that's not feasible, whether it's a piece of clothing or some incredible experience. I know many of my friends and I struggle with finding that balance between not overspending, but still not feeling like we're missing out on living our lives. So I am still learning for sure, and I encourage others to find that balance between spending on what brings you joy, but also making sure it's within your means, because living within your means is truly a spending habit that will minimize stress in your life.
Yeah, that's a really good point, that it will prevent you from having stressors later on. And it really does go back to that 50, 30, 20% rule that you mentioned earlier, and just being very disciplined within that. Mm-hmm. So the other element you mentioned is borrowing, which I think is really interesting, because I think many of us have perhaps been taught that borrowing, it's been couched in a negative. We've been taught that, as you said, don't spend beyond your means, so don't borrow to spend beyond what you can afford. But it seems like you're saying that in some cases, borrowing and understanding credit has its place and is very important.
Totally. So general rule, at this stage of our lives, we should be generally avoiding or reducing our debt. But in some cases, like you mentioned, it can actually help you achieve what you want to do in life. So whether it's buying a house, going back to school, opening your own business, taking on debt for an investment that can actually return more to your life or your well-being can be a good thing. One of the key components that you have to consider when you're trying to obtain debt is your credit score. And your credit score affects not only the rate in which you're able to borrow money at, but it can affect other areas of your life as well. So it's really important to focus on what that score is. For example, I was searching for my apartment in New York City, and my credit score was part of the application process. The landlord wanted to know that I was going to be able to make rent payments. So especially with the market right now in New York City and in big markets like it, it's really important to make sure your credit score is up to par, because it could be a make or break deal for getting that apartment. So I recommend 3 things to make sure you're boosting or improving your credit. And that would be pay off the minimum of your credit cards, and preferably pay them off in full. Secondly, you want to make sure you're not missing deadlines and pay it off on time. And third, make sure every year you're getting your credit report, making sure it's accurate, and correcting it if there's any mistakes.
Thank you, Kylie. And I think that's so important, of course, for those who are beginning their careers and building credit, but it's very useful information for others who might be in position to be rebuilding credit as well. Like I myself, I lived abroad for more than 10 years. So when I came back to the US, I no longer had credit history, and I really had to slowly re-nurture my credit score. And I realized there are so many things, as you said, getting an apartment, setting up my phone bill, my electricity bill, everything is tied to your credit. So that's so important to understand and really pay attention to. Mm-hmm. So thank you so much, Kylie, for joining us here and giving us some tips as to how to manage our finances in the early stages of our financial journey and really understanding the key elements of financial literacy.
Thanks so much, Wendy, for having this conversation with me.
And we've talked about a lot. There is a lot to consider, but have no fear. UBS offers a lot of resources to help you out. Check out ubs.com/thecode. The free site offers interactive educational modules to help you understand the keys to financial management. Or, of course, reach out and speak to a financial advisor. And also, make sure to follow us, UBS, on social media. We're on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And you can check out past trending episodes on demand. And as always, if you have any questions about your portfolio, please speak with a financial advisor. Until next time, I'm Wendy Mock. Have a great day, and remember to keep your eyes on what's trending.